Folks, I have here with me a coin that sort of represents some of the concepts that we're going to be covering in this video. This is a 100 peseta coin, and the guy here is Franco. If you don't know who he is, you probably should do a little bit of Googling and learning, because in many ways it shows some of the things that are happening around the world. This kind of idea that nationalism and right is always correct, and there's really no wrong with that. The coin is 80% silver. That's why I bought these, because it's junk silver, given that Franco is not exactly a liked person, a liked character in Spain. You buy these for the silver content, so you have basically half an ounce of silver with practically no premiums. But one of the curious and interesting things, at least historically, that I found about it is what it says. It says Francisco Franco, okay, caudillo de España. That means like leader of Spain, like supreme leader of Spain. And then it says, here it is, por la gracia de Dios, by the grace of God. He is the supreme leader of Spain by the grace of God. That was Francisco Franco, okay? Guy conservative, right? Yeah, you couldn't get any more right than Franco, and yet he's not exactly what you want as head of your country. So, yes, guys, if you're in any way involved in what's happening with Brexit, if you are in Europe, and Europe, for those that have a little bit of a confusion, UK, Britain is part of Europe as well. You may want to be listening and see what I have to say. As you guys know, at least most of you guys know, I come from Argentina. That is a country that has been a political mess for most of its existence, and especially the last 30 years have been pretty chaotic. And some of you may be familiar with the concept of Peronism, the General Perón, right? Perón. And many times I see it in people talking about that over the internet, and talking about socialism and Perón. The thing is, the Peronism movement in itself was really of anything that it fit that proper agenda at that time. The Peronists have been far right, far left, depending on what worked for their own personal interest at the time. It's very much incorrect to say that Perón was a socialist. He was, again, kind of like Franco, very much a conservative, right-leaning, very pro-business type of guy. The thing is, the problem is not that he was pro-business. The problem was that he had no moral compass of any kind, all right? It's not good enough to just be pro-business, to be right economically speaking in terms of free trade and making money. Making money is great. The problem is that when you make money as a criminal, or like an immoral monster that has no interest in the well-being of the people around you, that's when you have a little bit of a problem. So this comes into this context of Brexit just happening. You know, the UK has officially left the European Union. Okay, not officially, because a few things basically have to happen, but basically in 2 years from now, it's not going to be instant. Okay, in case you're not very familiar with what's going to be happening, it's going to be taking at least 2 years until all the process is done. So if you're living in the UK as a European Union citizen, you don't have to leave right away or anything like that. You have some time. Same thing if you are, like, you know, a million people here in Spain from UK, they have those 2 years at least as to get things sorted out. And then, you know, a number of things may end up happening. I guess that the most important part of what I want to be explaining in this video is that it's not going to be the end of the world. You know, Britain can survive on its own, and the same thing for the European Union. The European Union is more than capable of making it on its own, and the same thing for Britain or for UK. Now, a few things are likely going to be happening right now, okay? First of all, obviously, the pound, I think, dropped like 10%. It's going to be recovering eventually, but you cannot avoid taking a hit when you have something like this happen. When you were part of a larger, more powerful economic group, even if you are powerful yourself and you leave that, you are not going to be having the same leverage. You know, there's simply no way around that, right? And I read the comments on some of the the articles online and the comments of people. I understand many of those are generated with a purpose and such, but every once in a while you read that one that you feel the honesty of it. And one guy was saying, Boris promised this wouldn't be happening, that the pound wouldn't crash. People are pretty stupid sometimes. How could you possibly think that it wouldn't take a big hit with something like this? It's simply impossible. And thinking, Boris told me that it wouldn't happen, why wouldn't he lie to you in your face? Why does he owe you any honesty of any kind? You're not his best friend. You're not his family. He just says what he wants. And basically, all politicians do. Politicians, guys, lie. And that's maybe one of the few things that they have in common worldwide. There are exceptions, but to a great majority, they tend to do that. You cannot be surprised by it, but some people sometimes are. Going back to what happened in Argentina, because I think it's a good example of doing things wrong. Mostly, Argentina is a great example. And if you're being offended by anything that I've said so far, or I may say further down this video, keep in mind I'm the most critical about my own country. And I do love my country. I do love Argentina. But the way I am, maybe I'm too objective. Maybe I have that ability to detach myself and be extremely critical. I'm a critical guy. I mean, that's basically what I do. And I've been criticizing and observing very analytically my own country, in spite of how painful it is to admit many of its wrongdoings. Even personally, I do that with myself. I'm a very critical person with myself. So based on that observation, I can tell you, for example, with the Perón movement, you had very far right, and then you had people like the Kirchner government that ruled Argentina for 12 years, claiming that they were Peronists themselves, and still having a very much of a left-leaning, almost communist agenda, or at least a speech, very much of a communist speech, even though that was really not reflected at all in their actions. With their actions, they benefited greatly. The most powerful corporations in the country, they benefited without any doubt whatsoever. Some of the most powerful companies around the world, the biggest, richest companies, made a ton of money out of the back of the Argentine people because of this left-leaning, very much left-leaning, socialist, almost communist speech. The reality, of course, was different. What their actions showed was something else. And what their own personal situation showed was something else as well. In spite of all that lefty, communist, socialist thing, they had massive wealth, obscene amount of wealth that they even piled up in, piles of cash, which is, a long story, but it just shows what they were really all about. And again, in the case of Argentina, now you have President Macri, which many of us really do like. It's not perfect, but he is, politically speaking, you would say he's a center-right kind of guy, conservative center-right kind of a guy. That really means nothing, that really means nothing if it's not reflected by actions that show a desire to do things the right way, And that's exactly what's happening right now in Argentina. The country has to recover from a huge mess. It's not going to be happening overnight. But when you have transparent, honest people trying to work hard to improve things and not steal just for their own their own personal well-being financially and such, you have things finally working over there. Not because they were right, not because they were left, not because they were center, just simply because they're not corrupt and they're trying to do things right. That, I think, is the most important lesson. Now, the mass media is owned by certain people. Those people have certain interests, and they use, there's an entire social engineering going on that it is simply what it is, and it's unavoidable. When you have people owning the media that you consume, those people have their own interests, and they represent those same interests. In the case of UK, they have been forming the public opinion since they even got into the European Union, all right? And this got to a point where it was really very much in many ways, a hateful anti-European Union stance that got to a point that it was really impossible to continue together. I was in favor, and I'm very happy that this happened right now with Brexit, but maybe it's for different reasons. The way I see it, at least personally, is that the social engineering was so successful that even on the street, if you are ever over there, you would have seen for yourself in the street, people had a very much of an anti-European Union stance. They call. It's funny because some of them don't even realize that UK is part of Europe, geographically speaking, culturally speaking as well. But they will make reference of talk about Europeans as not them, as the rest of Europe without them included. So that anti-European sense was very strong up to the point that you have a country that it doesn't even share the currency. They had their British pound, which was a huge key advantage for them. All right, you're part of the European Union, but you keep your own currency. It cannot get any better than that. Now, the elites in London, the big fish over there, they played people into believing that their situation was really not favorable, and they were being screwed by Europe and such. A lot of people do believe that right now, and they think that they were being, in a position of disadvantage, when just alone with the ability of keeping your own currency while being part of the European Union, you had an advantage that very few others had. I mean, it's a key advantage that no one else had, and you had it. Now, if in spite of that you still feel that you're being screwed, that you're being taken advantage of, and you're constantly working against the union that you are part of, it really does not work. It doesn't work for anyone. It doesn't work for the UK, it doesn't work for the European Union either. So that's why I firmly believe, without any shadow of a doubt, that this was the best possible outcome. My own personal fear was that this was just all a plot just to make a few bucks. When I say a few bucks, I'm talking about a few billion bucks or more, right? Is by weakening the pound and the position of the UK within the European Union, but then at the end of the day, finally staying in the European Union. I thought that was a possibility. Now, that would have been so much worse than this, because right now you have a clean cut. You have UK, you have the European Union. Each one is capable of writing its own destiny, doing things its own way. Now the people I understand that there's 55%, and there's another 45% that will not be happy with. But guys, that's democracy. That's the way it works. People voted, they decided something. I don't believe this was rigged. Many times it happens, but I think that honestly, a lot of people really wanted out of it. They just weren't happy with it, and now they have the ability of doing things the way they want. Having said that, you are going to be looking, especially those of you in the UK, you're going to be looking at a period of economic instability. That's the price you're going to be paying for the independence that you just got. Now, think of it this way as well. People bleed for independence. Wars have been fought. In general, independence is not voted, it's fought for. And millions die and bleed and suffer for it. So this is, in all things considered, a great opportunity for those that wanted to get away of the European Union. Having said that, now that you do have that independence, and you do have that freedom, you're not involved in all the other aspects in terms of the way it's free. You don't have the free movement of people, or you will not have it eventually, but you're getting rid of that. But then you don't have many of the economic advantages that you once had. And it's just as the same thing with Cameron just resigning. Of course he was going to be resigning. Who would have thought in his right mind that he wouldn't? Of course the British pound lost 10% of its value. It would have been, and it's probably going to be losing more, and it's not going to be recovering anytime soon, because for obvious reasons. You're no longer part of the largest economy on the planet. You are very powerful on your own, but you're not what you once used to be with the rest. So now that you left, people within some of the Brexit, some of the more Brexit fanatics will say, now we're going to be dealing with and working out trade agreements with the European Union. I mean, you have to be 100% stupid to think that you're going to be working out anything that is other than awful for you, because again, for very much obvious reasons, you cannot have one of your key members leave and then turn around and say, okay, I want to make a nice deal for myself in terms of trade and economy. It's just not going to be happening. You know, first of all, you just caused quite a bit of I think that the euro dropped quite a bit as well. Not nearly as much as the pound, of course, but it dropped. It took quite a bit of a hit itself. So of course this affects the European Union as well. And of course, now that you're turning around and saying, okay, let's work out a deal, that deal simply cannot be anything even close to what you once had. You cannot have a member leave and be in much better position than it was as part of the group that it once belonged to. You simply cannot have that. It's basic elemental logic. It has to be worked out into something that, you know, noticeably worse than when it once was. If not, everyone would do the same thing. Everyone would leave and work out something better for themselves. Just doesn't seem fair, doesn't seem even logical. At least to me it doesn't. That would be maybe one of the things. And this is going to be happening and having an impact on people in the UK. I don't think that people in the rest of Europe are going to be suffering nearly as much as those in UK. You're going to be seeing a little bit of a complicated. The important thing is not the end of the world or anything like that, but it's going to be a complicated few years until you get back on your feet. Simple enough. And the thing is that it's a little bit of a problem, this dragging for 2 years. On one side, it's impossible to do things otherwise. You cannot, you know, rip this apart from one day to the next. So these 2 years. But the problem with these 2 years is that it's 2 years of suffering to some inevitable situation that is not beneficial. So that means companies leaving, money leaving, trust in the country just, you know, sliding and not being good. So you're going to be having these 2 pretty bad years first, maybe a couple more years bad after that, and maybe 5-10 years later you're back on your feet. And that's, you know, for earning your independence. Again, countries in general have to go to war for this kind of thing. Then you have the situation with Scotland not being happy at all with it. They're already talking about, you know, we're going to be having another referendum because 60% of us want to stay in the European Union. Again, if it's great for you to have your own independence, why is it not great for Scotland to have its own independence as well? I'm all in favor for independence of either one of those, right? And something similar happening with Northern Ireland. Not even hours after this happened, in Northern Ireland, already talking about referendum, United Ireland. The United Ireland thing is pretty much unavoidable, simply because of our population growth reality. You have, in 5-10 years, you have a significant majority of Catholic population in Ireland that wants to be part of Republic of Ireland, meaning it's eventually gonna be happening. I'm not saying anything that, you know, it's a big surprise. Everyone knows this, and if you've lived there, you know that the UK has been cutting expenses with a part of the country that it already knows and sees the obvious that's going to be losing. So why put so much money in something that eventually will not be yours anymore? So, and then you have Gibraltar, pretty close from where I am. They already said that if they left, chances are they would find a way of sorting out some kind of dual government agreement with Spain, because Spain said, you know, if you're leaving, you're going to be cutting that border for you, and if you're Gibraltar, it's very, very small. It's called the Rock for a reason. It's a very little part, mostly a financial sector. But if it's being cut out of the land, it really, you know, it's like a dead piece over there. So they will have to work out something, you know. So you're looking at all these things happening, and sort of UK being divided. There's a good chance of that happening. Is that all bad? I don't think it always is, especially when it's people that really do not want the same thing. If you have people that don't want the same thing, you know, people have the right to decide, I want to be part of this, I want to be part of that. You know, that's, you know, basic self-proclamation of what you want to be is an essential liberty that people should have. So it's going to be a little bit of a rough ride. Finally, a little bit of the negative aspect of all the UK IP thing, which I simply, in spite of being in favor of the Brexit, I'm not in favor of extreme populism and nationalism. You know, those are things I've seen firsthand. I know it just doesn't work. I don't care if it's left-leaning or right-leaning. Either way, remember our friend here, Franco, okay, by the grace of God, leader of Spain. These kind of populist, you know, leaders and these extreme nationalist agendas really never add up to anything good. I hope that people in England are smart enough to not have something like that, you know, in spite of being appreciative of their sovereignty and their nation, not have a nationalist head ruling things, because that could be quite ugly, but let's hope it doesn't happen. Already the UK Neil Farage was talking about the European Union dying and the Brexit, France leaving and Spain leaving. That's just that's a pretty poisonous and pitiful wishful thinking rather than reality. Spain, they don't even need a referendum. Spain is very much in the European Union, and they like it that way. Spain is not going to be leaving the European Union anyway at all. Same thing for France. You have a couple of politicians looking to have that key role and make a big name for themselves, but really France is not going to be leaving the European Union either. Same thing for Italy. So I think that the best thing, being positive and being hoping for the best for the others as well. I mean, having your own way and having things happen the way you want doesn't mean that you should have mean or ill intentions to others as well. If you recover your own sovereignty, okay, that's great, but there's really no need to destroy what you left. If you left something, be man enough, be good enough of a person to just leave it as it is and not try to destroy it. That's a dangerous thing of these type of guys, all right? They're looking for conflict. Bringing out the crystal ball here. What happens if 2 years of crappy economy in the UK suddenly blamed to the European Union because it's all their fault? I see a populist leader, I see a nationalist leader doing that sort of thing, because that's what nationalist characters tend to do. I don't think it will have I at least don't think it's likely that it will go far. But it is a little bit of a risk. It is a danger. It's something, a warning to keep in mind and be smart about it, okay? So, guys, it's going to be all for now. Just celebrate. It's a pretty good step in the health of the European Union and the UK. And it's pretty much a good day. This could have gone so much worse if they had stayed dragging and kicking and protesting and being against it and working against it within the European Union. That would have been so much worse than having, as someone put it, a divorce made in heaven. Folks, it's going to be all for now. Remember to share, thumbs up, take care. See you on our next video.